But let's also talk about AB InBev and, Kartik Sharma from the company has been appointed as the president for South Asia business. Let's talk about their market share outlook amid competition, which is only growing in the non-alcoholic beer category, business expansion, etc. Kartika, thanks so much for joining in. You've recently, been appointed as the president of South Asia operations. Tell us what's the first agenda for you. Budweiser, as we understand, is one of the biggest brands in the world. What's your market share in India, and how is it that you plan to take it forward?
Well, first of all, thank you very much. It indeed is an honor to be moving into this role now to lead the business here in India. It's exciting times to be part of India. As far as beer is concerned, we're a young nation. We're starting to get to spend more of our lives outdoors. We want to connect with our friends, and beer is a social catalyst. So this is an exciting time for the category. My first agenda is to keep our winning proposition, which is our focus on premiumization, continuing on. We're a pretty focused company. We don't like to change things around just because there's a change in leadership. We believe we've got our strategy right here in India, which is to focus on consumers who have the aspiration to engage with products that are not just of the highest quality, but also one that connect with them at their level of values. And Budweiser sort of embodies that, as do our brands like Corona, Stella Artois, and Hoegaarden. So we're excited that our strategy is right, and I want to continue to keep the momentum moving in the right direction and the right pace.
So how is it that you are viewing the competition in India? I mean, we understand it's an oligopolistic market, and the CCI has time and again had to step in against the price control and cartelization as well. How is it that you're managing all these nitty-gritties?
Well, we have a view that beer as a category is underrepresented vis-a-vis the demographic profile of the country and also our climatic conditions. Similar demographic profile and climatic conditions elsewhere would have possibly led to the share of alcohol being more skewed in the favor of beer. That isn't the case in India. A lot of that has got to do with the tax regime, where beer and indeed all of alcohol is taxed on absolute volume and not on alcohol strength. It kind of tilts the segment more towards hard spirits, with prices being almost 2.5 times for beer versus spirits. This is very different versus the rest of the world, where spirits are usually taxed higher than beer. So our view as a category is to continue to offer very good products that can bring consumers in, really drive penetration and reach across not just urban centers, but also tier 2 and tier 3 towns. We're very clear as far as our operating principles are concerned, and that is we're looking at India over the next 100 years. We do have a marketplace that hasn't seen beer necessarily get represented with a lot of the multinationals till very recently. Now, with a lot of the companies starting to look at the India opportunity, we think a natural consequence of this would be every time this competition is actually good for the growth of a category. But we do think what's happening now in the Indian beer space, with most multinational players operating in India, with most of their priority brands, it only augurs very well with how the industry will start to see a pretty significant increase, not just as a category, but also share of category in the overall alcohol segment. So we're excited.
Okay. All right. So, what's the kind of potential you see in a category like that in India, given the high taxes on alcohol? Is perhaps that category more profitable?
That's right.
Okay. And India is a market compared to the rest of the world.
Well, it actually, the idea of...
Yeah, go ahead, Kartik.
Sorry, go ahead.
Please do complete your answer.
Right, so to your first question on how do you actually, on your first question on how do you actually drive a profitable operation, we understand very clearly there are certain structural limitations to the way the category is structured. Alcohol at large at the moment, it's not part of GST, so states do have a greater level of flexibility to operate changes on the excise duty structure, which at times can become difficult because there are moments in the year when an unpredictable change could come. It oftentimes also comes along with relatively limited flexibility on operating the price changes that we would like. Not all markets in India give you that same flexibility to pass on some of the increases to the consumers. So it does require deft balancing. We are learning how to operate here. It's only been the last 4 years where we've operated as a wholly owned subsidiary. But we're understanding every year that if we keep our fundamentals simple, and that is if we have products that are built with the highest quality, there are consumers who are willing to pay for that quality. And we obviously, as I've alluded to earlier, are focusing on the premiumization agenda, which means brands like Budweiser, Stella Artois, Corona, Hoegaarden. More recently, we launched Beck's Ice, which is what we call an accessible premium offering, do enable our operations to sustain themselves, and of course allow for greater investments to be made as well. So we look at the future with a great deal of optimism because we believe there are consumers who across categories are trading up. They understand what trading up means in a value proposition, and I think we're doing a good job with offering a very, very strong value proposition with our products.
Yeah, hi, good morning. Now, India as a market compared to the rest of the world has a more social restriction, and that in turn, of course, leads to the taxation imposition, the prohibition of alcohol. Is India, in comparison to what you've experienced in other geographies, one of the tough markets to operate in?
India is having grown up here, I obviously am a little more sensitive to the local idiosyncrasies that make us such a special country. But I wouldn't say India is any more or less challenging than countries in the more emerging state of their economies. The government in most of these emerging economies tries to do a good balancing act between looking after the local population and citizens and their well-being at large. They also have to do a balancing act with taking over, with at least trying to keep the budget in a good, healthy state. And at times, during these transitionary moments in the economy, certain categories tend to bear the brunt of sometimes more erratic duty increases. I think we tend to see that with alcohol in India, in particular also because this is still very much a state oversight matter. But the fundamentals as far as consumers and consumers' aspirations are concerned, these are starting to cut through with the advent, of course, of telecommunication and social media across geographies. So the socializing trends in India are not very different than they are in any other countries, which means young people wanting to connect with each other in what we call a physical social network, not the virtual world, are constantly looking at ways that they can have socially accepted adult beverages that they can engage with. We believe with our portfolio over the last 4 or 5 years has seen a fairly strong expansion to meet the many different needs of what is a very heterogeneous consumer base. More recently, we've launched our non-alcoholic category, with the first one being Budweiser 0.0. It's certainly not the last of them. We do intend to see how we can continue to grow this portfolio as well, because again, needs are starting to expand and there are consumers who are starting to get very discerning about their needs being fulfilled. So whether there's a consumer who's looking at consuming alcohol on a certain occasion, but the same consumer wants a non-alcoholic appropriate occasion to be served with another product, we believe today Budweiser 0.0 can do that. There are also consumers who don't endorse alcohol at all. We also think these young adult consumers do have now choices as well, which makes our mission to bring people together and be very inclusive that much more possible, because we have a basket of products that are enabling us to do that. So again, 0.0 is something we're excited with because the response has been very positive.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us then this morning and taking us through some of the recent developments, Kartik. Good chatting with you. Okay. Let's take a very quick break.
It's our pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Take a break. Back with another Big Market Voice after this. We'll get you next from a conversation with Manulife. Do stay tuned.